According to recent analyses, the United States may be spending close to $900 million per day during the early stages of its military campaign against Iran, highlighting the massive scale and intensity of operations in the Middle East. The estimate comes from a report released by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, a Washington-based think tank specializing in global security and strategic affairs. In a report published on March 5th, CSIS estimated that Washington spent approximately $3.7 billion during the first 100 hours of the air campaign targeting Iran. On average, this translates to about $891 million per day. The first 100 hours of a military campaign are typically considered the most intense phase, when forces carry out large-scale strikes designed to quickly establish battlefield superiority and cripple the opponent's command and infrastructure. CSIS's analysis indicates that a significant portion of the spending during this period came from the consumption and replenishment of munitions. Of the total $3.7 billion, the operational cost of U.S. forces was estimated at around $196 million. This amount includes fuel, logistics, maintenance, deployment costs, and other expenses associated with running large-scale military operations. A portion of these operational costs had already been included in the U.S. defense budget for fiscal year 2026. However, the largest expense stems from replacing the massive amount of weapons and ammunition used during the strikes. CSIS estimates that the United States will need to spend approximately $3.1 billion to replenish its weapons stockpiles after deploying large quantities of bombs, missiles, and precision-guided munitions during the initial phase of the conflict. In addition, damage to military equipment and infrastructure has been estimated to cost another $350 million, most of which had not been accounted for in the current defense budget. One of the major reasons for the surge in costs is the large-scale aerial operations carried out during the campaign. Within the first 100 hours alone, the U.S. military deployed around 200 aircraft of various types to participate in operations across the Middle East. This force included several advanced combat aircraft, such as the stealth fighters F-22 Raptor and F-35 Lightning II, the heavy strike fighter F-15E Strike Eagle, the multi-role F-16 Fighting Falcon, and the A-10 Thunderbolt II close air support aircraft. These aircraft conducted continuous sorties from regional air bases as well as from aircraft carriers stationed offshore. According to CSIS, the cost of operating aircraft sorties launched from ground bases alone reached about $125 million during the first 100 hours of the campaign. Even after the initial surge of strikes, the operational costs of U.S. Air Forces are expected to remain at a minimum of $30 million per day. Alongside the air campaign, the U.S. Navy also deployed a large naval force to the Middle East in support of the operation. The fleet included 2 aircraft carriers, 14 destroyers, and 3 littoral combat ships. The presence of these naval assets not only supports strike operations, but also ensures defensive capabilities, protects critical maritime routes, and maintains U.S. military dominance in the region. Operating such a fleet is extremely costly. CSIS estimates that the U.S. Navy spent roughly $64.5 million during the first 4 days of maintaining naval operations in the region. After the initial stage, the daily cost of operating the fleet is expected to remain around $15 million. Another major contributor to the overall cost is the extensive use of precision-guided weapons. According to U.S. military estimates, more than 2,000 weapons were launched at Iranian targets during the first 100 hours of the campaign. CSIS believes that on average, each target was struck with approximately 1.3 weapons in order to maximize the probability of destruction. Based on this ratio, the total number of weapons used could reach roughly 2,600, including cruise missiles, satellite-guided bombs, and other precision munitions. Replenishing this enormous stockpile of weapons could cost approximately $1.5 billion. Precision-guided weapons are notoriously expensive, with many cruise missiles and guided bombs costing hundreds of thousands to several $1 million each. As a result, simply restoring depleted munition stocks represents a substantial portion of the total cost of the campaign. The United States is also facing significant expenses for defensive operations against Iranian retaliation. According to figures compiled by CSIS, Iran has launched roughly 500 ballistic missiles and about 2,000 unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, targeting Israel and U.S. military bases throughout the Middle East. To counter these attacks, the United States has relied primarily on advanced air defense systems such as Patriot and THAAD. These systems are capable of intercepting incoming missiles, but are also extremely expensive to operate. Each interceptor missile used by these systems could cost several $1 million. CSIS estimates that replenishing interceptor missiles for Patriot and THAAD alone could require approximately $1.7 billion. This highlights how defensive operations, often overlooked in public discussions, can represent a massive financial burden during high-intensity conflicts. In terms of equipment losses, U.S. military damage has so far been relatively limited compared to the scale of the campaign. Nevertheless, several incidents have drawn attention. The most notable was the accidental shoot-down of 3 F-15E Strike Eagle fighter jets in the airspace over Kuwait. The F-15E is a heavy strike aircraft designed for long-range precision attacks and battlefield support missions. However, the production line for the F-15E has already been shut down as the United States transitions to the newer F-15EX variant. This means that replacing the lost aircraft would likely require purchasing new F-15EX jets instead. According to CSIS, replacing the 3 lost Strike Eagle aircraft with F-15EX fighters could cost approximately $309 million. In addition to aircraft losses, several U.S. military facilities in Kuwait and Qatar have sustained damage from Iranian missile and drone strikes. These bases play a crucial role in supporting operations in the Middle East by providing logistics, maintenance, and command infrastructure. Repairing and restoring the damaged facilities is estimated to cost at least $50 million. Experts at CSIS believe that the cost of the campaign could begin to stabilize after the initial high-intensity phase. This pattern is common in large-scale military operations, where the opening stage typically involves the heaviest use of weapons and the highest operational tempo as forces attempt to neutralize key strategic targets and enemy defenses. Once these initial objectives are achieved, the military may shift toward lower-intensity operations or use less expensive weapons systems. Nevertheless, the overall cost will still depend on several factors, particularly the level of retaliation from Iran and the future trajectory of the conflict. Another important issue highlighted by the report is that much of the campaign's cost has not yet been included in the current U.S. defense budget. As a result, the federal government will likely need to secure additional funding to cover the expenses. According to CSIS, the Pentagon may have to request supplemental appropriations from Congress or adjust existing defense spending plans. The campaign itself began on February 28th, when the United States and Israel launched a large-scale airstrike operation targeting Iran. The strikes were aimed at numerous military and political targets, including military installations, command centers, and senior Iranian leadership figures. Initial reports indicated that several high-ranking Iranian military and political leaders were killed during the strikes, which triggered a rapid escalation of tensions throughout the region. Iran responded quickly by launching waves of missiles and drones targeting Israeli territory as well as U.S. military bases throughout the Middle East. Continuous exchanges of strikes and interceptions have pushed the region into one of its most dangerous periods of military tension in recent years. So far, there are few signs that the conflict will de-escalate in the near future. the United States has reportedly urged Israel to continue military operations until long-term strategic objectives against Iran are achieved. Meanwhile, Tehran has declared that it will not halt its actions until it delivers what it calls a heavy blow to the United States and its allies. Observers warn that if the conflict drags on, the financial burden on the United States could rise dramatically. Modern warfare requires enormous quantities of high-precision weapons, advanced technology, and complex logistical systems, all of which contribute to the rapidly escalating costs of military operations. Even if the intensity of combat decreases after the initial phase, the overall financial cost of the campaign could continue to grow significantly over time. In that context, decisions regarding military strategy and defense spending in Washington will play a crucial role not only in shaping the course of the conflict. Thank you for watching this story. If you found it meaningful, please subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this video. And now it's time to say goodbye. Thank you for staying with Societal Stories.